Something changed in the sky last night while you were sleeping. Not slowly, not with warning, not with the kind of gradual build you can feel coming from days away. It changed the way a radio tower switches frequency, a signal shift that happens in a single instant, and suddenly everything that was noise becomes signal, and everything that was signal becomes noise. That is what today is. May 4th of 2026 is a frequency shift dressed as an ordinary Sunday. Move through it without paying attention and you will feel faintly off by evening and not understand why. Understand what is actually happening in the sky right now, and the same day becomes something you can use with real precision. Venus moved into Gemini last night, and that single ingress is the loudest thing happening in the sky today. But it is not the only thing. Pluto is 2 days from stationing retrograde in Aquarius, which means it has essentially stopped moving, and a planet that has stopped moving broadcasts its signal at maximum intensity. The Sun and Mercury are both sitting in Taurus, which means the thinking mind is slow, careful, and unusually attuned to what is real versus what only sounds real. The Moon is moving through Sagittarius, adding a restless, searching quality to the emotional atmosphere of the day. Put all of that together, and what you get is a genuine tension between two different kinds of truth. The fast, electric, socially convincing truth that Venus in Gemini specializes in, and the deep, slow, structurally solid truth that Pluto stationing in Aquarius is forcing to the surface. How you navigate that tension over the next several days will matter more than most people realize. Before we go any further, I want to talk about the personal readings that I am offering currently. General readings speak to everyone, so they speak to no one. A personal wealth reading is built from your exact name, date of birth, time of birth, and place of birth. It examines the financial patterns in your specific chart, the timing windows open for you in 2026, and where your energy and money have been working against each other. Delivered as an audio reading to your inbox, plus a written report. Link is in the description. Okay, let's get back to the video. Better start with what Venus in Gemini actually means, because it is more specific than most people understand. Venus rules desire. It governs what you want, what you find beautiful, what you move toward, and what you allow yourself to receive. When Venus changes signs, the nature of what you want changes. Not permanently, not completely, but the emphasis shifts. The texture of attraction shifts. The language of connection shifts. For the past several weeks, Venus was moving through Taurus, the sign it rules. That was Venus at home. Taurus Venus wants depth, slowness, sensory pleasure, and the kind of reliability you can build a life around. It is not flashy. It does not perform. It wants to sit with you, share a meal, feel the weight of something real in its hands. If your relationships, your finances, or your sense of worth went through a period of quiet consolidation over the last month, that was Venus in Taurus doing what it does when it operates from its most grounded frequency. That chapter closes today. Venus in Gemini is a completely different creature. Where Taurus Venus was patient, Gemini Venus is curious. Where Taurus Venus wanted permanence, Gemini Venus wants stimulation. Taurus Venus stayed. Gemini Venus explores. Taurus Venus felt everything deeply and said very little. Gemini Venus says everything and feels its way through conversation, connection, and the electric pleasure of a mind meeting another mind that surprises it. This is not a criticism of either energy. Both are genuine expressions of how desire and beauty move through the world. But the shift from one to the other creates a specific disorientation worth naming clearly, because you will feel it today whether you can name it or not. The things that were satisfying yesterday may feel slightly flat today, not because they changed, but because your appetite changed. The person who was enough yesterday may suddenly feel like they are not quite enough to hold your attention. The project you were slowly and patiently building may suddenly feel dull in comparison to 3 new ideas that just arrived this morning. The financial plan that felt solid and grounded last week may now seem boring compared to something faster and more interesting that someone is describing to you with a great deal of enthusiasm. This is Venus in Gemini operating at its most seductive and its most dangerous at the same time. The seduction is real. Gemini energy is genuinely exciting. There is a reason conversations crackle under this influence, that new ideas feel luminous, that someone who can make you laugh and think and feel surprised becomes enormously attractive. Venus in Gemini is wired for that. It is not wrong to want it. The danger is that Gemini is an air sign. An air does not always distinguish between what is genuinely interesting and what is merely interesting to think about. It can generate enormous enthusiasm for ideas that have no structural foundation. It can make surface-level connection feel like depth. It can mistake verbal cleverness for genuine intimacy. Those confusions become much easier to fall into under this influence than at any other time of year, which is why the fact that Pluto is stationing retrograde in Aquarius at the same time matters so much. Pluto has been moving through Aquarius since late 2023, and it will be there until 2043. That is a generational shift in where the deepest forces of transformation are operating. Aquarius governs collective systems, information architecture, and the networks through which people organize themselves and share power. Pluto in Aquarius is, over the course of its transit, dismantling and rebuilding all of that from the foundation up. But a station is a different kind of event than a regular transit. When a planet stations, it amplifies. The symbolic pressure it represents becomes concentrated and immediate rather than slow and background. Pluto stationing in Aquarius means the themes it has been working on underneath the surface of collective life. The questions about who controls information, how systems get power, what structures are genuinely serving people, and what structures are merely performing service while extracting from people. All of those questions are becoming louder and more personally felt in the days immediately around this station. For you individually, a Pluto station in Aquarius asks a question that has teeth in it. It asks you to look at the networks you belong to, the groups you identify with, and the systems you depend on, and to distinguish honestly between the ones genuinely serving your growth and the ones you are maintaining out of habit, obligation, or the fear of what it would mean to leave them. Pluto does not ask gently. It does not wait for you to be ready. It removes what has finished serving you, whether you are ready or not, and the station period is when you feel that removal as an internal imperative rather than as an external event. The combination of Venus moving into Gemini and Pluto stationing in Aquarius on the same weekend sounds abstract until you feel it. On the surface level, Venus in Gemini is producing new options, new conversations, new stimulations. Something or someone is appearing in your field that is interesting, possibly more interesting than anything you've encountered in weeks. It is talking to a part of you that has been hungry for exactly this kind of aliveness. At the structural level, Pluto is asking whether the thing that is interesting is also true. Not in a vague sense, but true in the Aquarian sense, which is verifiable, structurally sound, and genuinely aligned with the systems your life is actually built around. Those two levels are not always pointing in the same direction today. The people who feel May 4th most acutely will be the ones being asked to reconcile them. The way this combination lands will vary depending on where it activates in your chart. But there are patterns that move through the elements worth naming because they describe something specific about how different temperaments will feel May 4th. If you are a fire sign, meaning Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius, the Venus in Gemini ingress lands with immediate relief. Fire signs have been carrying the weight of Taurus season with varying degrees of impatience. The Sun and Mercury in Taurus have pressed everyone towards slowness and deliberation, which does not come naturally to fire. When Venus moves into Gemini, it feels like a door opening. Conversation flows more easily. Ideas multiply. You feel more like yourself. The caution is this: Venus in Gemini makes every new idea feel urgent, every interesting conversation feel like a discovery. Your job over the coming weeks is to enjoy the stimulation without treating every exciting thing as a directive to immediately reorganize your life around it. Let yourself be energized without letting yourself be redirected. The Pluto station will also press fire signs to examine which groups and collaborative structures in your life are genuinely aligned with where you are going and which were formed in a context that no longer fully describes you. If you are an Earth sign, meaning Taurus, Virgo, or Capricorn, the shift from Venus in Taurus to Venus in Gemini will feel like a slight loss of solidity. Earth signs were comfortable with Venus in their element. There was a mutual recognition between Taurus Venus and the Earth temperament, a shared preference for what is real, what lasts, and what can be verified. Venus in Gemini introduces an element of uncertainty that Earth signs find disorienting at first. This is worth sitting with rather than resisting. Not every uncertainty is a threat. Venus in Gemini is asking Earth signs to hold a wider range of possibilities without needing to resolve them. A conversation you did not expect, a connection that does not fit neatly into a category, an idea that has not yet proven itself but has genuine potential. Taurus specifically is also carrying the additional weight of the Sun and Mercury in your sign right now. You are in a period of unusual self-awareness. The Venus ingress will shift some of that internal attention outward. Use it to express what you have been sitting with. Gemini season, arriving later this month, will reward articulation. If you are an air sign, meaning Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius, Venus moving into Gemini feels like a homecoming. Air signs will feel a notable lift in the social and communicative dimensions of life beginning now. For Gemini, this is the start of a season that tends to be activating in the best sense. Venus in your sign turns your natural magnetism up. Conversations carry electricity. Creative work involving communication, writing, or connecting ideas may find unusual fluency right now. The Pluto station lands in Aquarius, meaning Aquarius feels its weight most directly. Pluto's stationing in your own sign asks you to examine your own structure with an honest scrutiny that can feel destabilizing. But Aquarius is also the sign most capable of bearing that scrutiny. What Pluto is offering, even when uncomfortable, is an unusually accurate picture of what in your life is genuinely yours and what you have been maintaining for reasons unrelated to who you actually are. For Libra, the Venus ingress activates your ninth house of expansion and philosophy. Someone may enter your field who thinks differently enough from you that the conversation shifts something lasting. If you are a water sign, meaning Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, May 4th asks you to do something water signs find genuinely difficult, which is to distinguish between what you feel and what is true. Venus in Gemini can produce an emotional intensity around ideas and conversations that feels like intuition, but is sometimes closer to excitement. The feeling of being stimulated can mimic the feeling of recognition. The feeling of being charmed can mimic the feeling of trust. Water signs are excellent at reading emotional frequency, but under a Gemini Venus influence, the signals come quickly and can be surface level, and the emotional depth water signs naturally project onto things can fill in missing substance in ways that lead you somewhere you did not intend. Cancer is feeling Jupiter's expansive pressure in your own sign right now, at around 18 degrees. Your emotional world is larger than usual, which means its readings are more powerful and more susceptible to distortion. What you feel today is real. How you interpret what you feel deserves a second look. Scorpio feels the Pluto station acutely because Pluto rules your sign. Things beneath the surface of awareness become more vivid and more insistent. Trust that knowing, but hold conclusions loosely until the station pressure eases after May 6. Pisces is navigating the North Node in your sign, meaning your soul's path and your daily choices are in unusually close conversation with each other. The Venus ingress activates your fourth house of home and the private self. Something about the gap between who you are publicly and who you are privately may come into focus over the coming weeks. Let it. The practical question with any astrological event is never just what is happening, but what to do with what is happening. And May 4th of 2026, with its central tension between Venus in Gemini's appetite for the new and Pluto stationing demand for structural honesty, is a day that rewards a specific kind of attentiveness. The first thing to understand is that today is not a decision day. The combination of energies present right now is genuinely good at generating options and not especially good at evaluating them. When Venus moves into a new sign, the first few days carry the most intensity of its initial influence, which means the next several days are when everything new feels most compelling, and the things you already have feel least interesting. This is a known effect, and knowing it should change how you weight the impulses you feel right now. This does not mean nothing that appears today is real. It means that anything genuinely valuable will still be genuinely valuable in 10 days. If a new connection, a new opportunity, or a new idea is actually what it appears to be, it will survive the initial Venus in Gemini excitement and still be standing when that excitement settles into something more sustainable. Let that be your test. The second thing to understand is the specific role that language will play over the coming days. Gemini rules communication, and Venus moving through the sign elevates the persuasive and seductive power of words. You will encounter people who say things beautifully. You will encounter arguments that sound convincing. You will encounter framings of situations that make the complicated seem simple and the uncertain seem resolved. Some of those framings will be accurate. Some will be compelling, but incomplete. Mercury sitting in Taurus is your counterweight here. Mercury in Taurus moves slowly, and it is not impressed by eloquence for its own sake. It wants to know if the words match the substance. If someone is speaking persuasively, Mercury in Taurus asks you to sit with what they said long enough to feel whether the content holds up once the delivery stops being electric. This is one of the most useful astrological combinations available right now. The Venusian appetite for interesting communication alongside the mercurial insistence on what actually holds. Use them together. Let yourself be drawn into the conversation. And then, before you act, before you commit, before you reorganize anything around what felt exciting in the moment, sit with it in the Taurus register. Does it hold weight? Is there something real in it or only something appealing? When Pluto stations retrograde, the transformation it has been carrying outward begins moving inward. The question shifts from what is changing in your external world to what is changing in your internal relationship to power, your own influence, and the systems through which you operate. Things that felt settled may become unsettled, not because anything external changed, but because Pluto retrograde invites a deeper level of honesty about whether you are genuinely aligned with the direction your life has been moving, or whether you have been moving in that direction primarily out of momentum. This is not a comfortable process. Pluto retrograde periods are not designed for comfort. They are designed for accuracy. And the accuracy they produce, when you actually engage rather than resist, tends to clarify your path in ways that would have taken months of circling to arrive at otherwise. Jupiter in Cancer continues to amplify the emotional dimension of all of this. At around 18 degrees of Cancer, Jupiter is in the heart of its exaltation and operating at full strength. Jupiter in Cancer expands the emotional roots of things, the foundations, the private self beneath the public one. The growth it is facilitating is genuine and lasting, but it moves through feeling rather than logic. If something is growing in you that you cannot yet articulate, Jupiter in Cancer says that is acceptable. Not everything real can be immediately translated into language. Some things need time before they have words. Let them. Saturn in Aries is not interested in ease. It is interested in what you are actually building, as opposed to what you are thinking about building. Venus in Gemini energy can produce great enthusiasm for projects that never quite move beyond the idea stage. Saturn in Aries will eventually ask for accounting, not today but soon, and with precision. The practical action that serves you most today is specific. At some point, in the middle of whatever Venus in Gemini is presenting, take 20 minutes to write down one thing already real in your life that you have been undervaluing because it is not new enough to feel exciting right now. Not to talk yourself out of what is new, but as a corrective against the distortion Venus in Gemini introduces, which is the tendency to weight novelty so heavily that the genuine substance of what you already have becomes invisible. That substance is still there. Pluto's retrograde is going to ask you about it. better to have looked at it honestly before you are asked. May 4th is not the loudest day of 2026. It will not announce itself. The frequency it carries is subtle enough that most people will move through it without registering that anything shifted. But for those who are paying attention, who can feel the difference between a day that is merely passing and a day that is actually doing something, today has a distinct texture, a quality of invitation, something in the air asking whether you can tell the difference between what is real and what is merely compelling. That distinction, practiced today, becomes a skill that carries forward through everything Venus in Gemini and Pluto's retrograde will bring through the rest of May. The coming weeks carry moments where that skill will determine not just what you choose, but who you are becoming through the choosing. That is the frequency of May 4th. Quiet, precise, and easy to miss if you are not listening for it. You are listening. That already puts you somewhere different from where most people are standing today.